Now, the latest ITV news, where you are.
It is a day of mourning across the east of England. Flags at half-mast to mark the death of the Duke of Edinburgh at the age of 99.
Tonight, we join the region in paying tribute to Prince Philip, the Queen's husband and consort for more than 70 years.
Welcome to ITV News Anglia as we mark the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
He was an extraordinary man. He made his home in the east of England after he retired. We will be exploring his legacy with our guests around the region.
We have reporters at key locations with particularly strong links to Prince Philip and where he immersed himself in local life.
At Sandringham in Norfolk, where the royal family spend their Christmas and winter holidays.
Here in Cambridge, the Duke served as Chancellor of this city's great university for 35 years.
I'm in Westminster getting reaction from our MPs who've been paying tribute this afternoon.
Prince Philip had a great love of wildlife and for conservation and was a huge supporter of the work done here at Whipsnade Zoo in Bedfordshire.
Well, this is the scene at Peterborough Cathedral now. At 6 o'clock, the bells began tolling. 99 times in tribute to Prince Philip, one for every year he lived.
The Duke's death was announced shortly after midday. He died at Windsor Castle earlier this morning. He'd returned there last month after a lengthy period in hospital.
In a statement, the royal family said it is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. The royal family joined with people around the world in mourning his loss.
Well, the Duke of Edinburgh was a no-nonsense kind of man who couldn't abide a fuss. Regardless, there has been a torrent of heartfelt tributes paid to him today from all sections of society.
Let's look at how his passing has been marked around the Anglia region. Rob Setchell has our report.
A region, a country, a commonwealth united in mourning the loss of the longest-serving consort in British history and a real character. Prince Philip, the devoted Duke who for 70 years provided steadfast support to the Queen. She described him as her rock. They complemented each other perfectly. The Queen, regal and dignified. The Duke of Edinburgh, humorous and charming. Both loved, both admired. And remembered, especially for that sense of fun that always shone through.
World's most experienced pluck on there.
I remember the day when it was said he was going to retire. I mean, because he was only 96 after all. Somebody said to him, "I'm sorry to hear, sir, that you're standing down." He said, "Well, it's a miracle I'm still standing up." And that sort of reaction, of course, was immediate and showed, of course, a joy in life, which everyone benefited from.
He comes across perhaps sometimes as being a bit dry, but actually he was remarkably sensitive, very well read, loved music, loved animals, just a very distinguished and truly iconic, wonderful person.
I'm very grateful to the Duke of Edinburgh for all that he did in establishing that award scheme, which has supported so many young people throughout the world. And I'll also remember going to his 80th birthday party in the Royal Albert Hall, where Dame Shirley Bassey sang to him, and it was electric, and his face was just a glow of delight.
Prince Philip treasured our part of the world. He enjoyed looking after Sandringham and made it his home after retiring from royal duties in 2017. Today, many in that quiet corner of Norfolk he loved so much had their own tributes to offer.
He's a really special man, and it's a piece of history as well for the boys to remember.
I just think he was such an inspiring person, and he gave his entire life to the country, so why would you not want to celebrate him?
He helped a lot of families and rebuild their life.
Yeah, I just wanted to pay my respects. Obviously there's a grieving family out there, so...
We saw so much of him, from this visit to Vauxhall at Luton in the 60s to the opening of Bacton Gas Terminal in Norfolk, even taking tours of the Avon Cosmetics factory in Northampton and the Birdseye factory in Lowestoft, all part of the role of the Queen's Consort.
He gave up a promising naval career, by all accounts, to serve his Queen and his country. And he did so in the most exemplary fashion, loyally by the Queen's side, just a step or two behind her, but being that rock for her, being that support for her. And we can all be very grateful to him for the extraordinary job he did in supporting our Queen in the amazing work that she has done over the course of so many years.
Prince Philip was a regular visitor to Cambridge, a special place for the royals. His son Prince Charles went to university here, and his grandson Prince William became the Duke of Cambridge. Today flags were at half-mast, solemn respect at King's College for the Duke, who served as University Chancellor from 1976 to 2011. Throughout his life, he carried out more than 22,000 solo engagements. He was patron of hundreds of different organisations, and he made almost 5,500 speeches. One of his proudest achievements was founding the Duke of Edinburgh Award in 1956, giving millions of youngsters the opportunity to be the very best they could be. Joan Punt from Hockley in Essex was one of those. In 1958, as Joan Cooper, she became the first girl in England to win the Duke's coveted Gold Award. A proud day as she went to Buckingham Palace to be presented with it.
Everything was just so different to what we were used to. But it was lovely, absolutely lovely. And the Duke was very, very nice, very relaxing. He didn't he just seemed a very kind, thoughtful man. He didn't put on airs and graces, let me put it that way. He was very, very kind and spoke to us all, every single one of us, shook our hands and spoke to us and gave us our award, which was lovely. It was really good.
Bruno Peake from Galston in Norfolk knows just how much the Duke of Edinburgh Award has resonated. He's a pageant master and's been responsible for a large number of the biggest celebrations involving the royals for more than 3 decades.
How many young people have been helped by the Duke of Edinburgh's award and have resulted by going overseas and working overseas and doing things outside of this country? And having travelled around the world myself and spoken to many people, I've only ever heard good things about the Duke of Edinburgh.
As the royal correspondent with the Eastern Daily Press, Alison Cruse would often see and write about the Duke in his element.
Prince Philip did spend a lot of time at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate and was obviously very happy there. It's very close to the marshes and the sea, and he was just obviously relaxed here. He was a country person. And people just were pleased to see him out and about. The Prince would be out with his flat cap on and his tweeds and looked absolutely great, yes.
Few would deny that the Duke had his own style, but that was Prince Philip. Unconventional, unpredictable, unforgettable. Rob Setchell, ITV News.
Well, as Rob said in his report there, Sandringham held a very special place in the Duke of Edinburgh's heart. Our reporter Natalie Gray is there for us this evening. Good evening, Natalie. So give us a flavour of what the mood is like there.
Well, it's deserted because of restrictions. The visitor centre and the shop are closed, and we're pretty much here I've got the whole place to ourselves, a few police, a couple of satellite trucks, and that's it. However, there's been a steady trickle of people laying floral tributes at the Norwich gates. Just a short way along there, quite a lot of flowers there now. One tribute saying, "Big boots to fill." Now, the Duke of Edinburgh loved Sandringham, and I think it's fair to say that if he hadn't had to go to Windsor Castle because of COVID to join the Queen, he would probably have died here. This was his retirement home. He loved it. This was where he painted watercolours, he read, he entertained people. He could be himself. He felt free, and locals left him to it. Well, I'm delighted to say that Lord Bellingham, the former MP for North West Norfolk, joins us now. Lord Bellingham, you obviously knew him so well. How will you remember him?
I remember him as being really a remarkable country person, someone who was passionate about Sandringham, the estate, the local area. He was a great innovator. In fact, when he took over, Her Majesty and Prince Philip took over Sandringham Estate, they brought in a lot of changes for the visitor centre here, the caravan park, the social housing, the housing association, the organic farming. They modernised the estate, and he was at heart a true countryman. As you say, he adored being here because he could be himself and he could relax, and he won the affection and love and respect of so many local people.
He did. Now, he's known, of course, for his great sense of duty, his tireless work for charity, the odd gaffe, and a great sense of mischief. Did you witness that?
Well, I certainly did, because the lower key the event was, the more he enjoyed it. He loved going to village halls, to openings, other commemorations, and he adored meeting local people. And we had a bit of a rapport, because whenever I saw him at an event, he would say, "What on earth are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in Parliament? Haven't you got better things to do?" And I'd say, "Well, Your Royal Highness, this is a very important event with you here." And he said, "Well, you should be in Parliament." And so it got to a stage when I would meet him again the following year or a week later, "What on earth are you doing here?" And we had that rapport. But what I always noticed was that he would meet the dignitaries, the chain gang, as he called it. But he really wanted to get on and meet real people and talk to local people who respected his knowledge and his passion for so many things. He was just such an incredibly capable person with so many talents.
Just briefly, Lord Bellingham, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, we understand, are just up the road at Anmer. How must they be feeling tonight?
Well, obviously, my thoughts and prayers go out to them, to the entire royal family. When someone of 99 dies, you can't say it's a tragedy, but it's incredibly sad because it's the end of an era. He was, along with Her Majesty, he was an incredible father figure, not just to the royal family, but to the nation as well, to the Commonwealth. And so everyone in the royal family will be feeling this loss and will be very sad he didn't make the 100, but I think we'll also be incredibly proud of all the work he did, of his extraordinary talents, and we'll be able to, I think, rejoice in an amazing life.
Indeed. Lord Bellingham, thank you so very much for your thoughts. And that's all for now from Sandringham.
Natalie, Lord Bellingham, thank you very much indeed.
Well, another special place in the region for Prince Philip was Cambridge. He was Chancellor at the university for 35 years and was a regular visitor to the city. Our reporter Matthew Hudson joins us from there live now. Matthew.
They're ringing the bells here as well. The bells of Great St Mary's, the university church. As you say, there will be many, many people in the city tonight, myself included, who will have their own memories of Prince Philip in Cambridge. He became Chancellor of the university in 1976 and held the post, as you say, for 35 years, only stepping down in 2011 when he was 90 years old. He used to say that being Chancellor gave him enormous pleasure, but it's also something that he took very, very seriously indeed. The public side of that role is to hand out degrees, honorary degrees, at a ceremony once a year, but he did far more than that. The university says he would visit 3 or 4 times a year to discuss university business with the Vice-Chancellor and would always take the opportunity to chat with undergraduates and researchers while he was here. Now, we spoke a little while ago to the current Vice-Chancellor, who is Professor Stephen Toop.
My predominant thoughts today are to give thanks for that service. By all accounts, he was an extraordinary chancellor, really engaged with the university. He used to visit a few times during the course of the year. He went and visited various departments and institutes across the university. I think he had a special fondness for engineering. He always described himself as a very pragmatic person, and so do most engineers. And so he was very engaged with that department, but also in the area of conservation, where he took a particular personal interest and always supported the university's efforts really forcefully.
Controversial moments.
Frequent visitor here that it is said that there was scarcely a corner of the university or any of its colleges that he was not familiar with. During that time, of course, his eldest son, Prince Charles, was an undergraduate here, and more latterly, his grandson, Prince Philip, now has the title of Duke of Cambridge.
Matthew, thank you.
Well, MPs from around the region and national leaders have been paying tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh today. Our political correspondent Emma Hutchinson is at Westminster and can tell us more. Emma.
Well, the bells are tolling here too at Westminster Abbey, just round the corner from here, and the flags are flying at half-mast above Parliament, above Downing Street, and of course down the road above Buckingham Palace. MPs are on their Easter recess at the moment. Parliament is on its Easter recess, but it will be recalled a day earlier than planned on Monday for official tributes to be made. But of course, politicians around the region are already paying tribute. I spoke to the North West Cambridgeshire MP, Shailesh Vara, who remembered meeting the Duke on a number of occasions, described him as witty, friendly and warm. I also heard from the Harlow MP, Rob Halfon, who said he'd met the Duke at one of the state openings of Parliament here. He said it's hard to imagine national life without him. And earlier today, the Prime Minister paid his tribute from Downing Street.
Prince Philip earned the affection of generations here in the United Kingdom, across the Commonwealth and around the world. Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
And Emma, politics as usual, suspended for now.
Yes, that's right. Politics for the moment on pause, as is campaigning for the local elections that are next month. We were actually out on the campaign trail this morning with the Labour leader in Bedford when we heard the news from Buckingham Palace and broke that news to Sir Keir Starmer. This was his reaction.
Well, the UK has lost an extraordinary public servant in Prince Philip. He dedicated his life to our country. And above all, I think he'll be remembered for his support and devotion to the Queen. And all of our thoughts are with the Queen, the royal family and the British public as they come together to mourn this huge loss.
But Emma, in these COVID times, of course, guidance from the government for anyone wanting to pay their respects.
Yes, that's right. The government has advised people not to gather in large groups, not to gather around the royal residences. They've also advised people not to bring floral tributes to the royal residences, saying that's what Buckingham Palace have also asked people not to do. Instead, Buckingham Palace has said if people want to, they could make a donation to charity instead in the Duke's memory.
Thank you, Emma.
Well, let's get more reaction now. As a former journalist and royal correspondent, Michael Cole followed the Duke around the world for over 50 years. Joined us now from his home in Suffolk. Good evening, Michael. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. And firstly, your thoughts tonight.
Well, my first thought, Jonathan, is for Her Majesty the Queen and extending my deepest sympathy to her because however well prepared she will have been for this event, it will still be a tremendous shock. After 73 years, think of that, 73 years, what an achievement. She lost her beloved sister, Margaret, and then her mother, and now the man she called in a speech on the 50th anniversary of their wedding, her mainstay and help throughout those decades. It's very, very difficult, however well prepared she is. Fortunately, she's made of the right stuff. She'll weather this as she's weathered so much else in her life. And of course, there's the added complication. How on earth do you manage to reduce to 30 mourners all the people who would wish to be there at his funeral? And I imagine that will be at St George's Chapel at Windsor. Another complication, but one that she will accomplish in her usual great style. Her husband, of course, is a man of great achievement. He achieved more than many people ever achieve. He achieved more than he might have achieved in many, many lifetimes. That's how much he did in his life. He was not always such an easy man, though, and his faux pas are famous. He wasn't always the greatest diplomat, but he was always there, a couple of steps behind Her Majesty the Queen.
Yes, as you say, Michael, has been well reported over the years, not just by yourself, but by many others. He was a complex character, wasn't he?
He was. I felt he was driven. I felt he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He was born a prince, but he was a pauper prince. He was born on the kitchen table at his father's house in Corfu, and he was immediately rescued by the Royal Navy. HMS Plymouth, HMS Calypso rescued him because there was a revolution going on in Greece at that time. And I think that came through with him all his life. He grew up in the Royal Navy. He had a bit of the Royal Navy quarterdeck about him. And I think in time he was perhaps
unnecessarily harsh with his own children, particularly his sons, and took less interest in his grandchildren than he might have done. But fortunately, he fell out with Prince Charles, but he mended those fences. They were on good terms and on an even keel at the end of his life. And for an old sailor coming home to his last harbour, always a good idea to be on an even keel.
Absolutely. Michael Cole, thank you very much indeed for your recollections this evening. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, although complex and controversial at times, many considered the Duke of Edinburgh to be far ahead of his time when it came to his ideas about nature conservation.
Yes, Graham Stothard joins us now from Whipsnade Zoo in Bedfordshire, where Prince Philip would often stay for weekends in his own cottage, Graham.
Yes, we've heard an awful lot about Prince Philip's legacy today, but what we haven't heard quite so much about are his environmental credentials. He was a nature lover, he was an environmentalist, and so it makes perfect sense that he felt so at home here at Whipsnade, an organisation which has species conservation right at its very core. An issue he also felt incredibly passionate about throughout his life, although of course there were some controversial moments. My colleague Liz Summers has been looking at the effect he had on organisations such as this.
A memorable moment on one of Prince Philip's final official engagements, opening a new elephant centre at Whipsnade Zoo in April 2017 with the Queen before retiring from royal duties. The Duke of Edinburgh was president of the Zoological Society of London for almost 2 decades.
So His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh was responsible for establishing some really extraordinary legacy projects, like, for example, the foundation of our Institute of Zoology. And even to this day, that is doing groundbreaking work on zoonotic diseases like COVID-19 and how you stop them migrating from wildlife to people. And so the legacy of His Royal Highness lives on.
Prince Philip became president of ZSL in 1960, overseeing both Whipsnade and London Zoo. The following year, the Duke caused controversy by killing a tiger during a royal tour of India. He was made UK president of the World Wildlife Fund a few months later.
I like birds, I like animals.
Through his association with WWF, Prince Philip appeared in the survival nature documentary series produced by Anglia Television.
I don't believe that we can sit down and decide that wild animals are a bore and let's get rid of them. And somehow or other, I think that whatever argument, whatever justification you had, you would come to the conclusion that the wild animals are here on this earth, and if it's in our power to see that they have a reasonable chance of survival, I think we ought to take it.
During his time as president of ZSL, Prince Philip oversaw a number of high-profile projects at Whipsnade Zoo, including the breeding of the first cheetahs in Europe and the building of the popular railway line. The Prince Philip Award, set up in the early 60s, also recognises the work of promising young student conservationists to this day. Naturalist and TV presenter Chris Packham was one of the early recipients. The Duke's visits to the zoo were also inspiring.
One of the lovely things about His Royal Highness's visits here was that he was always open to talking to members of the public, talking to staff, but also being there, being photographed alongside wildlife and making people think about biodiversity, about wild animals, about what we stand to lose if we don't grip nature and get a grip on what we're doing to our planet.
Prince Philip once joked that he was the world's most experienced plaque unveiler, but his contribution to nature conservation was profound, a contribution that lives on.
More proof there, if any, was needed of the huge legacy Prince Philip leaves behind, talking all the way back to the 60s about environmental issues that really had yet to enter mainstream conversation. Well, he helped get them into the mainstream conversation, and for that, organisations such as Whipsnade will be eternally grateful.
Graham Stothard at Whipsnade Zoo, thank you very much indeed for that.
Well, we can now see the scene at Windsor Castle, where the Duke of Edinburgh died this morning at the age of 99.
Now, the palace will be preparing to reveal plans for his funeral. It's likely to take place at St George's Chapel in Windsor in around a week's time.
He's expected to be given a ceremonial royal funeral rather than a state one, which is usually reserved for the sovereign.
Now, the ceremony will be significantly pared down. That's due to COVID restrictions, of course, which allow for just 30 mourners, as Michael Cole predicted. And the public has been asked not to gather at royal residences.
There is extended coverage of the death of the Duke of Edinburgh on the national news at 6:30 and throughout the evening on ITV.
At 7 o'clock, there's Prince Philip, fondly remembered, with Julie Etchingham and Philip Schofield. And then at 9, there's the documentary Prince Philip, A Royal Life, from ITV's royal correspondent, Chris Shipp. The picture's there from Windsor.
Well, lots of you have been paying tribute to the Duke on our Facebook page.
Yes, Julie Hughes said, "Rest in peace, Prince Philip. Sincere condolences to Her Majesty, the Queen and family."
Steve Fishpool added, "R.I.P. Prince Philip. What an amazing life you had. You served us well."
Christina Johnson also paid tribute as well. She said this, "Rest in peace, thinking of Her Majesty and the grief of all the family."
Meanwhile, Mark Exton has been thinking of the Queen, Charles, Anne, Edward and the rest of the family at this hard time.
And let's end on this one from Audrey Jenkins, who said, "God bless you for taking such good care of our Queen. You'll be sorely missed." Thank you very much indeed for those.
And you can find more tributes to the Duke of Edinburgh on our website, itv.com/Anglia.
Yeah, there's also a roundup of the rest of the region's news there as well.
Well, that is where we will leave our look back at the life of Prince Philip in our region.
It was shortly after midday that the palace announced that the Duke had died. The Queen, with deep sorrow over the death of her beloved husband at the age of 99.
Tributes have been paid throughout the day. The Prime Minister saying the Prince inspired the lives of countless young people, many here in the East, which played a significant part in his long life.
At Sandringham, the royal estate in Norfolk, which he helped transform over many years, as we've been hearing, and called home in later life, of course, and where he enjoyed so many moments as a husband and also a father.
He was ahead of his time, caring passionately about the environment and nature, but it was his service to the Queen and country for more than 70 years that he should perhaps be most remembered.
Modest and always preferring to be one step behind the monarch rather than one ahead. He once said, "Our only distinction was that we did what we were told to do to the very best of our ability and kept on doing it." Good night from us.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Across much of the region through today, after a fairly dry, bright and sunny start first thing this morning, the cloud soon moved its way in from the north and west, and through this afternoon it started to feel rather chilly with some light rain. And for the weekend we've still got that chilly feel, the risk of overnight frost as we go through Saturday night and into Sunday, the cold air back in place, and with the cold air in place, any showers that we likely see over the weekend could have a little wintry flavour to them too. We've said goodbye to the weather front that brought the cloud and the outbreaks of rain through today. This feature down to the south and east could just introduce a touch more cloud and some light rain through the day on Saturday, but it's this northerly airflow that drives in the colder air, and that's why it stays cold through the weekend. Now, we've still got the weather front with us. That leaves us with some light outbreaks of rain overnight tonight, but for many it does start to turn drier by dawn tomorrow morning. The wind's staying fairly light too, and with light winds and any clear spells, it will be a cold start to our day on Saturday morning. Cloudy for many though as we kick off on Saturday. There will be a few brighter spells through the day. Remember that system towards the south, that just brings in a little bit more cloud and some showery bursts of rain. And as the cold air digs in, some of this rain could fall as rain, sleet or even some snow. So by the afternoon, staying chilly, temperatures 8 to maybe 9 degrees Celsius. Could be a touch higher than that though, where we do see some spells of sunshine. Now here times of high water, we're looking at Cromer there at 6:51 and 6:43 tomorrow afternoon. As for Sunday, a brighter day in prospect. In fact, there'll still be a few showers through the day, and these still could fall as rain, sleet or even snow, but I think they'll be fairly scattered. The further west you are, drier with some sunny spells, but are still chilly because we've still got the cold air in place and that northerly airflow. But if you like something a touch warmer, back to where it should be for the time of year, it turns drier, brighter and milder through Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday for next week. That's it. Take care.